But it's funny. I've been watching you, and you've talked about this. You talked about this with Balaji. You asked him how many mainstream traditional finance people have woken up to the insolvency of the system and are looking for ways out, including buying Bitcoin. And he said a lot. And I have experienced the same thing. And I'm seeing a lot of people waking up from the traditional finance industry, just like I did in 2008, saying something's wrong. This is fundamentally unstable. Something's wrong. I'm going to go get curious and dig in. And when they dig in, they're going to get orange pilled into Bitcoin in most cases, because they're going to realize that there is a fundamentally more stable system out there. Right now, Bitcoin's price is incredibly volatile, but as a system, it's sound because there's no debt in the system. Because Bitcoin is no one's IOU. It is, if you own the on-chain Bitcoin, it is not issued by anyone. It is something that organically arose between people, and there's no issuer. Unlike fiat currency, where there's an issuer, every dollar is actually an IOU. Go look at the piece of paper in your wallet if you still carry physical cash. It says it's an IOU. It's paid to the order of from the Federal Reserve Bank. It is an IOU. And what's backing that IOU? It's turtles all the way down, so to speak. It's just the full faith and credit of the US government. Well, what does that mean? Is that anything more than a confidence game? Is that more than the confidence game that Bitcoin or gold or real estate are? Everything is subjective. The whole concept of money is ephemeral. And once you get your hands around that, then you realize, wow, I would rather store the fruits of my labor in an honest ledger that no one can manipulate. And you pretty quickly come to hard assets like Bitcoin as being something that you want to have in your portfolio. And then you start to realize, wow, I can move Bitcoin better, faster, cheaper as a payment system, especially using a layer 2 like Lightning Network. Then you're in a whole different paradigm than the traditional banking system. And again, I cannot underscore just how important it is that the bank regulators' moves against these tech-forward banks and the White House coming out and criticizing financial innovation. They are trying to regress the technology of the US financial system because they're afraid of it. And it's just like the taxi and limousine commissions with Uber. They're going to get overrun. And I really wish that cooler heads would prevail.
We spent a lot of time talking about the United States economy, the U.S. banking system, but there's many places around the world where people have no confidence in their national currency, they have no confidence in their banking system, et cetera. Are there lessons to learn from some of those international markets that either the U.S. Kind of current regime could learn from to prevent this from happening, or individuals could study and say, hey, let me take those lessons away so that I'm prepared in case something catastrophic does happen?
I am so glad you asked that question, because we tend to be so America-centric, and non-Americans who have had direct experience with this absolutely get Bitcoin off the top of their heads, because they've lived in many cases with inflation or hyperinflation in some cases during our lifetimes. And so they intuitively get the idea of a non-government money that a dictator or an authoritarian government cannot manipulate. Period. And so, yes, if you look at the price reaction in Bitcoin, it still is trading as a risk-on asset, but the correlation with equity markets is breaking. And I think that is an interesting sign. Is this a short-term thing or is this a long-term thing? We don't know. And I tend to think that the price of Bitcoin is the least interesting aspect of Bitcoin, as you know, and I don't trade it myself. The price action is telling the regulators something, and it is global. And I think, to the extent that we've got some TradFi people who are getting orange pilled and starting to buy it, that's helping push the price up. But most importantly, it's these offshore folks who have a direct experience with this. In the developed world, most people, because we haven't lived through inflation or hyperinflation, have no idea that the dollar might not be stable. And so when the dollar ultimately isn't stable, which notice I said when, not if, it is when that happens, then it's going to be a cold shower. It's going to be a big shock to a lot of people. And the same thing's true in much of the developed world.